You can wait outside." The words hung in the air of the grand conference hall, cold and sharp as colleagues in tuxedos and evening gowns turned to stare at me. My fingers tightened around the worn leather of my presentation folder, the one containing 9 months of exhaustive field research and mathematical optimization that had saved our corporate logistics firm millions of dollars over the previous fiscal year. "Excuse me?" I managed to say, my voice steady despite the sudden tension in my chest, barely audible over the soft clinking of crystal champagne glasses and the low hum of polite conversation. Gwen Norwood, our marketing director, gestured dismissively with her manicured hand, her golden bracelets clinking against her wrist. "We are at absolute capacity for the awards ceremony tonight, Lyle. You understand how these executive galas work." I glanced around the spacious room. Every single colleague from my operational division sat comfortably at round tables draped in heavy cream linen, adorned with floral centerpieces. Even Chloe Miller, the junior intern who had been with our corporate division for exactly 5 weeks. The very same intern who had somehow presented my proprietary cross-continental shipping algorithm as her own individual creation during last month's executive board meeting. "Why would we waste an expensive chair on you?" Gwen added, her lips curving into a thin, condescending smile that failed to reach her eyes. "You are just a senior data analyst, Lyle. Operational staff belong in the background, not at the head tables." That precise moment crystallized everything that had gone wrong with the corporate environment over the preceding years. The overlooked achievements, the stolen innovations, the endless midnight hours spent fixing systemic flaws while management claimed the glory. My gaze shifted across the room to the massive projection screen at the front of the hall, which blazed with bold lettering announcing the Innovation Excellence Award, an honor that should have borne my name. "I see," I said quietly, opening my personal laptop resting on the check-in desk. "Check your email, Gwen." Moments later, as chime notifications began sounding in rapid succession across the smart devices of every director and executive in the room, I turned around, picked up my folder, and walked out, closing the heavy oak doors behind me on their suddenly panicked voices. Before I continue with what transpired, after I stepped out of that hotel lobby, I ask you to place yourself in my position for a moment. Imagine devoting decades of your life to mastering a technical craft, delivering measurable financial triumphs to an organization, only to be told that you are not even worthy of a seat at the table you helped construct. If you have ever been underestimated, passed over for promotion, or watched an arrogant superior take credit for your intellect, you will understand why the actions I took that evening were not merely an emotional outburst. This calculated response was 4 years in the making, and what unfolded over the following months proves that patience, when paired with meticulous legal preparation and strategic precision, is the ultimate equalizer in the corporate landscape. My name is Lyle Redford. At 54 years old, I served as the senior supply chain data architect at one of the nation's premier logistics conglomerates. I possess an analytical mind and a gift for uncovering hidden patterns within massive operational chaos. Those skills made me exceptional at engineering efficient systems, but utterly unsuited for navigating deceitful office politics. I am the kind of professional who speaks plainly, works long past sunset, and firmly believes that solving complex structural problems matters far more than who takes the bow in front of shareholders. I was raised in a modest Midwestern town by a father who managed a regional freight depot and a mother who taught advanced calculus. They instilled in me an unshakable belief that quiet merit and technical rigor would always be recognized and rewarded by leadership. They were wrong. When I joined the conglomerate after earning my master's degree in operations research and system engineering, I believed I had found an ideal institution, a corporate environment where technical precision and operational efficiency were genuinely valued. My early years at the company proceeded as I had envisioned. I developed a real-time inventory tracking architecture that reduced warehouse routing errors by 52%. I designed predictive modeling frameworks that enabled our primary corporate accounts to optimize their intermodal freight schedules across international transit corridors. I even uncovered a major algorithmic glitch in our dispatch software that would have triggered a catastrophic failure during peak season, saving our firm from losing its primary commercial client. Each time I completed a major project, I followed corporate protocol to the letter, submitting comprehensive technical documentation through standard supervisory channels. However, the operational culture began to rot 4 years ago when Grant Mercer was appointed as our new departmental vice president. Grant arrived with a stellar resume and a reputation for turning underperforming divisions into high-margin success stories. What the executive hiring committee failed to realize was Grant's true methodology. He was a master of corporate appropriation, absorbing the intellect of his subordinate team members while deflecting responsibility whenever operational failures occurred. The first instance of this pattern occurred during my 3rd year under his management. I had spent 3 months designing a specialized algorithm that predicted maritime port congestion by analyzing atmospheric weather patterns, vessel tracking data, and historical customs processing times. After presenting the working prototype to Grant in a closed-door briefing, I was stunned to see him presenting the exact same framework to executive leadership 2 weeks later during an emergency board session, presenting the entire system as his own conceptual breakthrough. When I privately questioned him afterward, suggesting that my name should have been included on the white paper submitted to the board, Grant offered a cold, unblinking stare. The broad conceptual vision was entirely mine, Lyle, he asserted with smooth arrogance. You merely executed the underlying code. I was speechless. The entire architectural framework, from initial data ingestion to final user interface design, had been conceived and executed exclusively by me. Yet, as a dedicated professional committed to team success, I hesitated to escalate the issue. That hesitation was my fundamental mistake. Over the subsequent months, Grant repeated this tactic continuously. Whenever I identified an inefficiency and engineered a solution, Grant would reframe the work, present it to senior executives, and accept bonuses while my salary remained flat. When I finally sought guidance from Deirdre Vance in Human Resources, detailing the pattern of stolen intellectual contributions, her response revealed the cold reality of corporate bureaucracy. Do you possess explicit written documentation proving that these mathematical frameworks were created outside your assigned job duties? She asked, barely glancing up from her monitor. I explained that I had original source code files stamped with my personal timestamps, but Deirdre simply shook her head. Any intellectual property created during your employment using company time or facilities belongs exclusively to the corporate entity under standard employment doctrine, she stated flatly. Grant Mercer is your managerial supervisor. When he presents departmental innovations to executive leadership, he is acting within the appropriate chain of command. I left her office with complete clarity regarding the unwritten rules of the organization. Credit flowed upward to management, labor remained buried at the bottom. The situation degenerated from unfair to intolerable 9 months ago. After noticing massive operational friction and fuel waste in our cross-continental trucking routes, I spent my personal weekends developing a comprehensive logistics platform. This new framework promised to revolutionize our entire fleet management strategy, offering potential cost reductions of 36% and improving delivery transit times by 58%. I prepared a master presentation folder containing complete algorithmic proofs, intending to share it at the quarterly Executive Strategy Summit. But as I arrived at the executive boardroom, Grant intercepted me outside the entrance. Leadership has an overloaded agenda today, Lyle, he said smoothly, taking the binder from my hands. Hand over your presentation materials. I will summarize your key data points during my divisional overview. Reluctantly, I relinquished the folder. I sat in the back of the 4-hour meeting, waiting for my segment, only to watch Grant deliver a brief 3-minute summary that completely butchered the core technological breakthroughs. The board voted to table the initiative indefinitely. 5 weeks later, Chloe Miller joined our department as a junior intern. Fresh out of an Ivy League business program, and holding the distinct advantage of being the niece of our chief executive officer, Chloe was immediately granted access to high-level strategic meetings that I had been excluded from for years. 3 weeks after her arrival, I was summoned to an all-hands assembly where Grant and Chloe announced the immediate rollout of a revolutionary fleet optimization engine. It was my exact framework, rebranded under a different title with minor aesthetic modifications to the dashboard. The initiative received immediate executive funding. Chloe was promoted to a permanent managerial track, hailed as an innovative prodigy, while Grant secured a massive executive performance bonus. When I confronted Grant in his private office, his dismissal was chillingly blunt. Chloe's presentation aligned with senior executive priorities, in a way your technical version never could, he said, adjusting his cufflinks. Results matter in this building, Lyle, not who typed the original equations. That night, sitting in the quiet of my home study, surrounded by 4 years of documented innovations that had generated tens of millions for the firm, while my own career remained paralyzed, a decisive shift occurred within my mind. If the organization truly believed that results mattered more than ethics or loyalty, I would demonstrate the exact financial cost of that philosophy. I began executing a clandestine, meticulously planned strategy. I worked on a new technical architecture, one that I never accessed from company servers, never discussed near corporate devices, and developed exclusively on personal hardware outside of business hours. I refined my original supply chain framework, identifying structural vulnerabilities in the version Grant and Chloe had stolen and integrating proprietary algorithms that rendered their copied software obsolete by comparison. Furthermore, I compiled a forensic archive of every instance where my intellectual contributions had been misappropriated, establishing a verifiable paper trail complete with digital signatures, original repository logs, and witness statements from former colleagues who had suffered similar treatment under Grant's management. I organized quiet evening discussions with key professionals who had previously departed the company under frustrating circumstances. My first meeting was with Regina Thorne, a brilliant former product designer who had resigned after her patented tracking module was claimed by her supervisor. My second meeting was with Nolan Drake, a senior client relations strategist who had walked away when his account retention model was presented to the board without attribution. Each conversation confirmed that our company suffered from an endemic culture of managerial parasitism, a system that systematically exploited technical innovators while rewarding political manipulators. More importantly, these discussions allowed me to assemble an elite core of seasoned, highly skilled professionals who were eager to build an ethical alternative. 4 months before the annual awards gala, I scheduled a private presentation with Sienna Montgomery, a managing partner at Montgomery Capital, a venture fund known for supporting disruptive enterprise technologies. I presented my advanced supply chain architecture alongside a detailed operational execution plan. This platform could redefine international freight logistics, Sienna remarked, scrutinizing my technical benchmarks. But why relinquish a secure senior position to launch an independent enterprise in such a competitive market? Because I am not launching this enterprise alone, I answered calmly, presenting a secondary dossier. I introduced the professional profiles of 9 industry veterans, including Regina Thorne and Nolan Drake, who had signed formal commitments to join my new venture contingent upon securing initial capital. Sienna's expression sharpened with intense interest. That changes the risk profile completely, she admitted, and your current employer will remain oblivious until their operational pipeline grinds to a halt. 3 weeks later, Montgomery Capital executed a binding term sheet for $4 million in initial Series A funding. 6 weeks after that, I secured office space under a confidential corporate holding structure, executed formal employment agreements with my incoming team, and filed provisional patent applications for my advanced algorithms. Concurrently, Nolan Drake began discreetly connecting with key commercial clients who had voiced growing dissatisfaction with our employer's rigid service models. Through strategic conversations, Nolan identified 7 major commercial accounts representing over 30% of our department's recurring revenue. He presented our independent service architecture, securing conditional service contracts. that would automatically take effect upon the official launch of our new firm. Everything was aligned with mathematical precision. I required only the appropriate public moment to execute the final transition. The company's annual awards gala provided the ultimate stage. After discovering that Chloe Miller was scheduled to receive the Corporate Innovation Excellence Award for my stolen algorithm, I finalized my tactical exit. I prepared formal resignation notices for myself and my 9 departing colleagues, finalized our client transfer documentation, and structured a press release slated for nationwide distribution the following morning. On the evening of the gala, I dressed with deliberate care, selecting a tailored charcoal suit that reflected quiet authority. I arrived at the venue carrying my leather presentation folder, not with any expectation of addressing the assembly, but to ensure my former superiors witnessed me holding the original documentation one final time. I stood near the entrance of the ballroom, observing the arrival of executive leadership. I watched Grant Mercer proudly escorting Chloe Miller toward the head table. I observed Gwen Norwood managing the event layout with sharp arrogance. When Gwen noticed me standing near the threshold, her irritation was immediate. That was when she uttered the fateful words, "You can wait outside." As I stood outside the hall, digesting the sheer arrogance of her exclusion and the smirking indifference of my colleagues, 4 years of endured indignities dissolved into absolute clarity. I opened my personal laptop, connected to a secure mobile hotspot, and executed a single command. That single email dispatched our collective resignation letters, served formal legal notices, invoking federal copyright protections under Title 17 of the United States Code, Section 106, regarding unauthorized software usage, attached evidence of internal copyright infringement, and transmitted client transition notices directly to executive leadership and the board of directors. As chime notifications echoed across the ballroom, signaling the arrival of my transmission, I closed my laptop, stepped into the elevator, and descended to the parking garage. My foot had barely touched the accelerator of my sedan when my mobile device began ringing continuously. The caller identification displayed the chief executive officer's private line. I declined the call immediately. Within seconds, frantic text messages poured in from Grant Mercer, followed by urgent alerts from Deirdre Vance in Human Resources. I ignored them all. If you are still following this narrative, I extend my genuine appreciation for your time. The experience I am detailing is one that countless dedicated professionals face within corporate structures. Watching your intellect exploited, your dedication unrewarded, and your professional standing minimized by those who possess power but lack capability. If this account resonates with your own career journey, I invite you to interact with this video and subscribe to our channel for more detailed accounts of professionals reclaiming their independence. Because the events that transpired after I drove away from that hotel were not merely about personal vindication. They represented the complete restructuring of our professional lives. As I navigated out of the hotel parking structure, my phone vibrated incessantly on the passenger seat. I briefly paused at a red light to review the incoming notifications. 11 missed calls from executive leadership, 4 frantic messages from Grant Mercer, and a remarkably desperate text from Gwen Norwood that read, "Whatever compensation package you are seeking, the executive committee will double it immediately. Return to the banquet hall now." That message confirmed that senior leadership had finally read the attached legal exhibits. My transmission contained unambiguous digital forensics, demonstrating that the fleet algorithm powering their commercial operations was my exclusive intellectual property, created outside corporate scope, and that their continued commercial deployment constituted willful infringement under federal copyright laws. I was approaching the exit gate when a figure emerged from the stairwell, waving frantically. It was Bradford Jennings, our senior vice president of corporate operations. Bradford was breathing heavily, his tuxedo jacket unbuttoned, having sprinted down 4 flights of concrete stairs to intercept me before I cleared the premises. "Lyle, stop!" he gasped, resting his hands on his knees as I lowered my driver's side window. "You cannot simply walk away like this in the middle of an executive event. The entire board is inside. The company needs your operational oversight." I looked at him with calm detachment. That is a fascinating perspective, Bradford, I replied. Less than 20 minutes ago, your event management team informed me that I was not even worthy of a chair at the table. That was an unfortunate administrative oversight, Bradford stammered, straightening his silk tie with trembling hands. A miscommunication by event staff. Was it also an administrative oversight when Grant Mercer erased my name from 3 consecutive white papers? I asked, smoothly. Or when Chloe Miller was awarded corporate honors for presenting my proprietary code? Or when HR repeatedly informed me that my intellectual contributions belonged entirely to the firm? Bradford's expression hardened into desperation. Business operations are highly complex, Lyle. Individual achievements are routinely merged into broad corporate initiatives for organizational clarity. I have observed precisely whose achievements get absorbed and whose careers get celebrated, I countered quietly. But that dynamic is no longer my concern. The commercial clients you contacted are bound by strict non-compete covenants, Bradford warned, attempting to assert legal leverage. If you attempt to solicit our primary accounts, our legal division will seek immediate injunctive relief and asset freeze orders. I permitted myself a slight smile. I suggest your legal division review those contracts with greater scrutiny, Bradford. Those covenants restrict clients from transferring operations to existing market competitors using your firm's legacy platform. However, my new enterprise operates on an entirely distinct, proprietary software architecture under Title 17 of the United States Code, Section 106, that I engineered independently. Furthermore, your internal legal counsel issued a written opinion 6 months ago declaring my original independent framework outside corporate interest. That determination rendered your non-compete arguments void ab initio under governing state contract law. Bradford's face lost all color. What are your terms to resolve this immediately? He demanded. Executive vice presidency? Full equity participation? Name your figure. What I sought for 4 years was professional respect and fair attribution, I said, shifting my vehicle into drive. But you have demonstrated something far more valuable. I do not require a seat at your table when I possess the capability to build my own enterprise. As I drove onto the main avenue, I observed several more corporate directors spilling out of the hotel entrance, their grand banquet completely abandoned. I drove directly to our new corporate headquarters, a renovated industrial loft space in the technology district that I had leased weeks prior under our holding entity. When I stepped through the doors at 8:30 in the evening, my core team was already assembled. Regina Thorne, Nolan Drake, Valerie Dawson, and 6 other specialists who had resigned simultaneously were setting up workstations. Did executive leadership attempt to intercept you? Asked Valerie Dawson. Bradford Jennings chased my vehicle to the gate, I answered. Offered me immediate executive titles and equity. I trust you declined, Nolan Drake said with a grin. Absolutely, I replied. Nolan turned his monitor to show signed service agreements from our first 3 major commercial accounts. They have officially severed their contracts with our former employer, Nolan reported, and they referred us to 4 additional international logistics clients. Over the next several hours, our team finalized our market entry protocol. Vanguard Apex Systems was scheduled to issue its initial press release at 9 in the morning. Our software patents provided absolute protection, while signed agreements guaranteed immediate cash flow. At precisely 10 o'clock that evening, my personal phone chimed with an incoming call from an unlisted number. Regina Thorne recognized the sequence. That is the private line of Elliot Fulton, executive chairman of your former company's board, she noted quietly. I selected speakerphone so our team could observe. Mr. Redford, came the gravelly voice of Elliot Fulton. I have spent the last 3 hours reviewing the legal exhibits you dispatched. I believe it is in our mutual interest to convene a private settlement conference. I am listening, Mr. Fulton, I replied calmly. The documentation regarding Grant Mercer and Chloe Miller is troubling, Fulton admitted. However, your departure and the resignation of 9 key personnel threaten severe operational disruption. We are prepared to offer you full control of the technology division and a substantial financial settlement. I appreciate the offer, Mr. Fulton, I responded. However, our decision is absolute. We will not be returning under any conditions. Let me be remarkably clear, Redford. Fulton's voice darkened. Our corporation possesses resources that far exceed your startup. If you proceed, our litigation counsel will file immediate federal lawsuits claiming breach of fiduciary duty, misappropriation of trade secrets under the Defend Trade Secrets Act, Title 18 of the United States Code, Section 1836, and tortious interference. We will lock your enterprise in litigation until your capital is exhausted. I signaled to Valerie Dawson, who initiated recording. Mr. Fulton, every action taken by my team has been executed in full compliance with law, I stated calmly. The intellectual property powering Vanguard Apex Systems was developed on personal time using personal assets, as confirmed by your legal department's prior release. Regarding trade secret claims, our code architecture is entirely original and covered under published patent filings. Furthermore, under the Worker Adjustment and Retraining Notification Act, Title 29 of the United States Code, Section 2101, our resignations violated no notice periods. If you initiate frivolous litigation, we will file counter-claims for bad faith prosecution and publicize your board's systemic misappropriation of employee work product. The line remained silent for several seconds. Elliot Fulton let out a heavy sigh. What will it take to secure a commercial licensing agreement for your algorithm? He asked. Name your terms. I looked around the room at my colleagues, brilliant professionals who had taken a stand together. There are no terms, Mr. Fulton, I concluded firmly. This is a permanent operational transition. I disconnected the call. That night, our team worked through early morning hours finalizing our operational infrastructure. The following morning, at precisely 9 in the morning, our global press release was published. By 9:15, major business publications were covering the emergence of Vanguard Apex Systems. By 9:30, market analysts reported a sharp 11% decline in our former employer's stock price. At 10 in the morning, we watched our former chief executive officer deliver an emergency press briefing. His usual composure was absent as he attempted to assure analysts that the departure of operational staff would have no impact. The market disagreed. During his 22-minute address, company shares plummeted an additional 8%. When the chief executive announced that Grant Mercer had been relieved of his executive duties and that an internal audit had been initiated, I felt complete validation. By noon, our switchboard was inundated with inquiries from prospective commercial clients and former colleagues seeking employment opportunities at our new firm. 1 week following our launch, as our team prepared for operational integration with our fourth international freight partner, an email arrived from Chloe Miller. The subject line read, "An apology." The message was short, "Mr. Redford, I was informed by Grant Mercer that the algorithm was a joint project and that your contributions were fully compensated. I did not comprehend that the work was entirely your personal creation. For whatever it is worth, I express my sincere apologies." I stared at the text for a moment. While her sentiment may have possessed some regret, it altered nothing. Chloe had been an eager beneficiary of a toxic system. Rather than issuing a reply, I closed the message and returned to executing our client integration. 3 months after launch, Vanguard Apex Systems had secured binding contracts with 38 major corporate accounts, including 4 of the largest global logistics firms in the world. Our platform delivered an average cost reduction of 43% for commercial partners, exceeding original projections. Our internal team expanded rapidly from 10 founders to 34 full-time professionals, each selected for technical capability and personal integrity. The ultimate vindication arrived 8 months after the awards gala. Our former employer issued a mandatory filing announcing emergency restructuring to avoid operational insolvency. Their equity valuation had collapsed by 57%, and financial media reported active buyout negotiations. I was reviewing revenue reports when my assistant informed me that Bradford Jennings was waiting in our lobby, requesting a meeting. "Show him in," I instructed. When Bradford entered my office, the transformation was striking. The arrogant executive was gone, replaced by a weary manager. "Thank you for seeing me, Lyle," he said quietly. He placed a binder on my desk. "This is a formal acquisition proposal authorized by our board of directors. The board wishes to purchase Vanguard Apex Systems and integrate your software framework. I opened the binder, reviewed the financial figure, an astronomical sum, and closed it calmly. That is a significant valuation, Bradford, I remarked. It reflects the undeniable market dominance of what you engineered, he acknowledged, and the catastrophic cost of attempting to compete against your platform. Why were you selected to deliver this proposal? I asked. Bradford looked down. The board believed you might prove more receptive if presented by a familiar colleague. Even though that colleague stood by, while I was told I was not worthy of a chair at the table? I noted softly. Bradford hesitated. The firm has instituted sweeping structural reforms, Lyle. We established formal intellectual property attribution policies and restructured executive compensation. All measures that could have been implemented years ago had executive leadership valued technical integrity over corporate politics, I observed. Yes, Bradford admitted, which is why I am authorized to extend a personal invitation. Would you consider returning to the firm as Chief Innovation Officer? I regarded him for a long moment. 4 years ago, such an offer would have represented the fulfillment of my aspirations. Now, it was entirely meaningless. I will review your acquisition proposal with my legal team, Bradford, I stated carefully. However, I will never return to your organization as an employee. I have constructed an enterprise founded on mutual respect, ethical attribution, and technical excellence. That is an environment I will never compromise. After Bradford departed, I sat alone in my office, gazing out at the bustling floor of our development center where young engineers and veteran architects worked collaboratively. The frustration of being excluded from an executive banquet had served as the catalyst for creating an authentic legacy. The managers who had once dismissed my contributions were now seeking my technical approval. But the true victory lay not in their concessions, but in the realization that the corporate table I had once sought to join was never worth a seat in the first place. By founding Vanguard Apex Systems, I had constructed a permanent platform where every professional's intellect was honored and rewarded. 8 months after that final meeting with Bradford, our board formally rejected their acquisition offer, announcing instead the international expansion of Vanguard Apex Systems across European and Asian logistics corridors. Exactly 1 year after the awards gala, where I had been instructed to wait in the hallway, I was invited to deliver the keynote address at the International Supply Chain Leadership Summit, the premier annual gathering for our industry. As I stepped onto the stage before 3,000 corporate leaders, I recognized several familiar faces in the front rows, including senior directors from my former firm. On this occasion, their expressions contained no condescension. They observed me with absolute professional respect. I opened my address with the identical 6 words that had once been weaponized to humiliate me. You can wait outside. A quiet murmur rippled across the auditorium. Those precise words altered the trajectory of my life. I continued into the microphone. Not because they caused momentary pain, but because they exposed a fundamental truth. I was wasting my career seeking validation from individuals who lacked the capacity to recognize true value. I was measuring my professional worth by their flawed standards rather than my own potential. The vast hall fell completely silent as I shared my transition from an overlooked analyst to the founder of an industry-leading enterprise. I refrained from naming my former employer or specific managers. There was no need for personal acrimony. The narrative was no longer about their failures. It was about the transformative power of recognizing one's own intrinsic value. I looked out across the sea of attentive faces, some inspired, some reflective, all listening intently, and delivered my concluding thought. The most powerful position in your professional life is not a chair saved for you by someone else. It is the enterprise you have the courage to build yourself. Have you ever experienced a moment in your career where your intellectual contributions were dismissed or stolen by management? How did you respond to that challenge? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if this story inspired you, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more empowering accounts of professionals taking control of their own destinies. Remember, sometimes being excluded from someone else's room is the exact motivation you need to build an empire of your own.